All right, let's get started here. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to have a webinar on our people counting platform and a couple housekeeping things. You'll see a Q&A folder at the top of your screen or at the bottom of your screen. There'll be a little Q&A folder or icon. And as I'm going through this presentation, please feel free to leave your questions there. You just click there and type in a question. You can do so anonymously or list your name. And then at the end of the presentation, we will take your questions and we'll hope to be helpful along the way. Today, we're going to talk about our people counting platform. And before we begin, I do want to say that for everyone who signed up, if you stay to the whole kind of webinar here and you've signed up accordingly, you will get a $25 gift card. So thanks in advance for your time. So we're going to talk about density, who we are. We're going to talk about this new emerging trends of sensors and people counting. And then we're going to actually go in and do a little bit of a demo of what are the things you can do once you have this type of data. So I work with a company called Density. I am our director of market research. And I've been here for over 3 years. And since I joined, it's been really exciting to join Density as we've kind of emerged to kind of marry both hardware and software to create this people counting platform. And so our focus is to improve the efficiency, security, and occupant experience of customers' buildings in real estate. We were founded in 2014 with some pretty cool founders from big companies. And we have a actual HQ in San Francisco where I'm based. And we also have a manufacturing facility in Syracuse, New York, which is pretty exciting to see both the hardware and software being developed in a proprietary way. So we build the most advanced people counting sensor, and it's not a camera. So it is not capturing any personally identifiable information, which is pretty important, especially in the age of GDPR and a lot of privacy concerns in sensitive areas like workplaces. And what the sensor does is it's installed above a doorway, and as people enter and exit, it uses computer vision to scan the area underneath the doorway and recognize and measure as people enter and exit and consolidate that count across a building or a room or a floor. And it can do so in a way that is able to integrate that data into other systems and analytics, which we'll talk about today. 3 things to keep in mind about this platform, just as a little framework. It's accurate. So it's really important that you have accurate count, and we'll talk about that. Anonymous, and it's in real time. So as people are entering and exiting within 700 milliseconds, we're able to use all of the cool tech that I'll talk about to actually recognize how many people are in different spaces. So to give you a little snapshot, we work with a lot of Fortune 500 companies, as well as companies across different fields and industries. And one thing that they all have in common is that they really care about both their people, so their customers, their employees, and they care about or they have a large amount of corporate real estate or commercial real estate to manage, and so they're trying to balance, their end experience with the physical spaces that they serve these very important assets in. And so, one of the things that I have been most excited by is talking to all the different teams at these different companies to understand how are they actually using data to make something that may seem far-fetched, like a smart building initiative, and make it real, make it actually count and make their jobs better. So that's going to be a framework that we'll talk about today. So on that note, I just want to provide this framework, which is that accurate people counting. Once you know how many people are in different parts of a building, then you can accomplish this grandiose vision, which is smart buildings. So when people talk about smart buildings today, IoT, AI, machine learning, it really starts with just a basic understanding of how are my buildings being used, where are the people in my buildings, and then once you know that, you can do a lot of really cool things, which we'll talk about. You can secure the building, you can make it more efficient and save on energy or save on actual efficiency in terms of square footage. And you can also make the experience better. So services and amenities, all those things come together once you know the actual occupants in the building. So it's about this occupant-centered mindset. And we've seen it across different verticals from corporate to commercial real estate. So I'm going to just paint the picture here of what this can look like. So once you know how many people are in different spaces, and this is just an illustration, part of the app with densities, you can just see how many people are in different places in real time and how that's changing over time, if it's getting busy or not. But you can do a lot of really cool things with that data. You can change the occupant experience, which will kind of go into. Which what that means is that you can even help occupants understand things like how busy is the cafeteria, or should I go to this space or another space based on how many people are there. You can actually give that same data to the people who are running the facilities, and they can save on efficiency, and they can actually say, okay, well, where are most busy spaces? Maybe those places that need to be cleaned. Those are the spaces that need to be serviced. So it changes this whole way of operating and managing buildings. It's really about facilities management in a way that is truly experience focused. And the cool thing about it too is that there's a lot of ROI. So once you can count people, you can start to understand things like, well, what do these people actually need? What do they not? What do they don't need? And start to take away or reconsolidate your resources based on that. And the clients that I've been most impressed with are ones that can work across these different teams, because a lot of companies are siloed to get to the ROI that's going to benefit all of these different teams. And of course, once you know how many people are in a building, you can keep them safe, and you can do things like integrate into security system. So when people talk about this whole smart building vision, again, it comes down to things like experience, efficiency. And at the end of the day, that all starts with, hey, where are people in my building? How are they using the space? So at a high level here, I'm going to show you what this actually means. So we're going to go into our dashboard here, and I'm going to start to paint a picture of the type of decisions that you can make, both long term and short term. So let's look at this space here. This is a look at our density analytics dashboard. We have different dashboards that you can configure analytics and spaces. So I'm going to start with this 15th floor here. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because what's really cool is that you can see within a building, when you have density installed, on the building level, on the entrances to the building, you can understand the building, how it's being used, but you can even zoom in as far as wherever the sensors are installed above those thresholds. So let's look at the 15th floor here. We can start to understand, well, how many people come to that floor? So in this case, this is a 15th floor. It had the marketing and sales team in it. So we can start to understand, how is that team in a corporate real estate setting, how are they working? Are they coming into the office? When are they coming in? So we see on average, the most visits are over 500, which is really helpful because we can start to understand maybe what does that mean in terms of desks that they need or spaces. We can even see when they come into the office and when it's most busiest. And we can also look at peaks. And peaks and valleys are really important when you talk about long-term decisions, because you need enough buffer to provide spaces in space planning, especially for when it's most crowded. But you also need to understand, well, how often does it get crowded, where, and what does that look like? So I'm looking here at the working hours of 8 to 6, but we can change this at any given time. I can even look at over the course of a quarter, over the course of 90 days. And we're finding more and more that our clients are trying to get ongoing data, because their workplaces are always changing, and it's important to really understand how this changes over time. So let's say we now understand, okay, well, it's a 15th floor. We had over 500 people there. Now, what does that mean in terms of maybe what we need to do? What are the decisions that we can make with this? Well, we know that it was actually planned for 300. And so maybe that means that we want to have more desks there, or we want to change our workplace strategy. So this type of logic can be applied to this whole Chicago campus here. You can look at specific areas of the building, and because it's all real time and constantly updated, you can get a really sense of the actual traffic over time of your building and or specific spaces. So let's also now try and take a look at analytics. Analytics is my favorite tool that we have, and what it's allowing us to do here is it's actually able to look at um, different metrics that matter to the people who are actually making these type of decisions. So we can zoom into occupancy, utilization, so how this is changing over time. And I've looked at a set of offices, and I want to understand, well, which is the office that's used most and least? And it turns out that one of these is actually being used way, way less. And so this is helping with some of these long-term decisions that are helping us consolidate and do some space planning. But what's I think really exciting too is once you have this framework, you can start to do things like actually change day to day how these spaces are being used. So in a workplace, you can do things like, okay, well, in this neighborhood of desks, are there enough seats? Well, that's a very important decision that everyone's making today, especially in the age of hoteling and not. And you can actually see, okay, well, there's this many empty seats. These are these different workplace teams are working, and here are the available seats right now, and also over time that you can start to kind of get that data. You can start to look at all these different dashboards, and you can start to build your own to actually add a dashboard and to share it with the rest of your team, because maybe your facilities team won't want to be actually logging into the platform, but you can just email them here. So the logic behind all of this is really to be able to think about um, and drive decisions across all of your different spaces. So if we look at we want to look at, for example, all the cafes. We want to understand for the culinary team how much food that they should order. Well, occupancy, utilization, real time data is really what's going to help them. And another note here that I'll add is one thing that we've seen that's been really helpful for the services and amenities team is that they can actually do things like add an alert. So you can add an alert and get notified when an occupancy is at a certain threshold or it drops to a certain number. We've seen this being applied to cleaning staff and hospitality. So even in lounges and airports where they want a service based on the number of people that come, change the food, restock everything. So that's all based on this kind of real-time capabilities. Now, I think one thing that's important to understand here, because data can be really overwhelming, is what are some of the decisions that we're already trying to make in our organization, and do we need data to make those decisions better, faster, or in a more responsible way? And so it really depends on the organization, but we can configure these type of dashboards and trends, analytics to answer those specific questions. So to go back here, I'm going to go back to our slideshow, and I'm going to talk about how this data actually kind of is collected and what this means for being able to scale this type of infrastructure. So as I said before, we are not a camera. Density builds a device that is installed above a doorway, so it's constantly scanning, and it's able to discern using these really cool onboard processing algorithms that happen on board to actually look and say, okay, well, that is a human movement entering and exiting, and it's going to see everything else as just noise. And so as you're as you're scaling this, you're able to see in real time with the count of, okay, how are these different spaces being used because of this accuracy? And so the device is constantly scanning using state-of-the-art AI that's basically scanning like topographical images and looking for human objects and ignoring everything else. So it's really exciting technology, and it's cool to see it applied in a way that doesn't infringe on anyone's privacy. So it's not a camera. Now, the thing that's kind of interesting about this is we've talked about a high level of these strategic decisions. We've talked about real-time data collection and bringing it all together. But at its core, the reason why this has been so hard to actually develop over the past, whatever, since smart buildings became a buzzword, is because the humans do pretty strange things in doorways. So as they're crossing a threshold, they may do things like walk in packs or pull different objects. And so getting accurate count is really something that requires the type of technology that we built. My favorite is the bottom left here. We have a little dog that comes in and it's not being counted as a human. And you can just see here the level of granularity without being having any personally identifiable information. So to zoom out here, why our approach is one that we are kind of um, sharing as one that it's going to be able to be scalable across different verticals, different industries, is that we take a privacy first approach. So that means that this is not a camera, as I said, it's secure and it can actually be installed in a variety of environments because the sensor is aesthetically pleasing, and it can count accurately and share that data in different systems and accurately. So we've talked a lot today about the nitty gritty of the analytics tooling and some of the decisions that you can surface. But in order to make this a part of infrastructure, we can also integrate this data directly into different systems. So whether it be integrated workplace management systems, or data processing or something like a Tableau, whatever your team is using to get started, we can integrate that count data directly there. So I'm going to take your questions now. I would like to just ask you that, if you're on the fence about should I ask a question or not, or I'm sure this is a very nascent world. So any question is totally fine here. We're all learning about how this type of technology is going to change the buildings that we use every day. So please feel free to leave a question there at the top or the bottom. So the first question here is, are we responsible for installation or we're density handle? So the short answer is we'll work with you to do whatever is best. We have a number of large scale deployments that have gone through the actual end users installation partners, and that works well. But I do want to just note, I didn't talk a lot about the installation, but at a high level, that device that I have shared, it gets mounted above a doorway. So it's very simply just mounted above a doorway, and then it connects it to power over Ethernet or Wi-Fi in a standard outlet. So that's something that can be done by different teams. But typically we have had teams that have installation partners or installation teams. How have some of your workplace customers utilized the data to implement change? I'm really glad someone brought this up because I did talk pretty abstractly. The one thing that I have been most proud of is to see how these different teams are actually using data to make different decisions. So we've had people save millions of dollars on trying to understand how should we restructure our footprint of portfolio. So should we consolidate one building or another? So they've actually changed leases based on this. Should we change design? So we've actually changed and consolidated two floors. Should we switch to activity-based working if they're a workplace? And how do we use the ongoing data, the real-time data of how many people are here now, how many desks are available, to scale that going forward? So we've seen the ROI be realized, and it's the reason why people keep on coming back. And it's something that I definitely can share. We have case studies on our website too. If you can go to Density, we have a customer page if you want to learn more there. And we have a blog that constantly kind of is iterating some of those ROI stories. Great. I noticed your smart building slide, a mention of security. Can you expand on that? So I'm glad that someone mentioned that. So there's a couple use cases. Number one, life safety, and during evacuation, to know how many people are in different parts of a building is immensely important, especially because it's real time and it's able to be shared in a way that doesn't infringe on anyone's privacy. So you can start to say, okay, how many people are in different parts of a building for evacuation or employee mustering? That's a life safety use case. The other one that has been actually really exciting recently has been the problem of tailgating. So when someone, usually in a non-malicious way, goes into a building or a secure area, they open the door and they leave that door open to a tailgater or someone that can sneak in right past them. And that's an unauthorized access, and it's really, really dangerous in terms of protecting, all the IP or the network or the personnel in a building, because you basically compromise that access control. So we can actually integrate within an access control and use that people count technology to discern when one person enters or one person badges in, but multiple people follow behind them. So it's a tailgating and access control. We have a lot of information that we can share. So if you're interested in that, that will be also a webinar in the coming weeks that will be specifically on security. So we'll share that. Okay. And it looks like we have one other question coming in. All right. What is the size of our company? Oh, cool question. Yeah. So Density, we are around 50 people. We are venture backed and have been growing really in an exciting way. So if you want to know more about Density and you're in SF, you can come by our office. We have a really cool office here. I'd love to show it to you, but I'm not going to share the screen this way. But we have we have a whole setup of all of these different configurations, from security and safety and the workplace planning demos. So yeah, we're a pretty exciting company to work for, and it's been a cool rocket ship of a ride. So I think it looks like we're all done with questions. Thanks again for your time, and we'll be sending over that Amazon gift card as a token of our appreciation. And please feel free to reach out. I personally am really passionate about how all of this technology is changing physical space and the way that smart buildings of tomorrow will look. So please feel free to reach out, and thank you for joining us.